everybody. My name is Connor Lynch with Westwood Media Center. We are proud to be partnering with the Council on Aging to provide virtual programming through our cable channels and online to keep seniors engaged throughout the coronavirus pandemic. We can be found on Comcast channels 8 and 12, Verizon channels 32 and 42, as well as online at westwoodmediacenter.tv. I'm happy to turn things over to your host for the evening, the Director of the Council on Aging, Lena Arena DeRosa. Lena, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Connor. We're always so blessed and grateful for our Westwood Media because through you, we can connect with our seniors during this pandemic. So thank you, Connor. Thank you, Westwood Media. You guys are amazing. And Sean, welcome back. We loved having you. I heard from lots of people for the bird watching that you did this fall. So we're thrilled to have you back for the secret life of winter birds in Eastern Massachusetts. Thank you. Let me introduce my seniors to you. And I want to read this so I say it correctly. Sean Kent is a field biologist and education manager for the Museum of American Bird Art at the Mass Audubon, Blue Hills Trailside Museum, Moose Hill Wildlife Sanctuary, and Stony Brook Wildlife Sanctuary. Sean is an accomplished naturalist and has conducted research on wild bees in Massachusetts, Boston Harbor Islands, Elizabeth Islands, and Massasoit Community College, Belize, New Mexico, and Arizona. Sean has an MS in biology from Northeastern University and a BA in biology from the College of Holy Cross. Sean, welcome. Thank you for joining us, and take it away.
Thank you very much. I'm really excited to be here. And today I'm just going to talk a little bit about things that you may be seeing or hearing in your yards and in your neighborhoods and out and around Westwood to make the winter time a little bit, be able to engage more with nature, especially in this time. It's really important. And I also work at the Museum of American Bird Art just down the street in Canton, right across from Canton High School. And we have recently been able to reopen to the public on the weekend. And this may change, so always just call or check the website. But we really have a wonderful exhibit right now. And you can see a little bit of it right behind me here by David Sibley. And he recently, in the springtime, in April, came out with a book. And it's a book of essays about what it's like to be a bird. And it's really wonderful and engaging. It's different from his field guides, if you're familiar with those. And he has double the life-size paintings of a lot of the illustrations in the book on view at the museum. And if you can, I encourage you to come down through there. But what I thought here is, why don't we just kind of jump into this and start learning about some of the birds that you can have in the wintertime. So to start off, and especially, with the turn of the new year, and I've been running a lot every morning, you'll notice the bird songs as the days start to get even just a little bit longer, the bird songs start to change and you're hearing a lot more songs in the morning. So to start off here, I just want to look at the black-capped chickadee, which you might be familiar with, and look at some of their songs here. So if you can listen to their bird song, here it is. So you can hear that, and I'll play it one more time. You can hear, sweetie, sweetie. And that's a little bit different. That's their song that you're normally hearing when they're calling to each other and kind of looking for mates or territories. Because I know a lot of people are familiar with the Chickadee song, but they'll sing that at different times. So if you look at this red-tailed hawk picture flying here, so if there's a red-tailed hawk in the area or another predator, you can see the chickadee down low. Maybe there's a coyote around, you may see it, you may not see it. And these are all pictures that I've taken, most of them at the Museum of American Bird Art, but within Eastern Massachusetts. This was actually on our 124-acre property here. And you can see this young coyote. This is right by our museum in May, and you can see the chickadee up in the corner right here at the dogwood tree right through there. So when they start to see these predators here, their song is different, and here it is. So that's the chickadee, dee, 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 dee. And what that is, that's a warning call. So instead of the sweetie or the little chirps where they're talking to one another, the chickadees are singing, well, doing a warning call. And the warning call will differ. So you can hear it again. You know, I think that was about 5 chickadee. But depending on the predator that's present, so it could be the coyote here, the hawk here, something else, they'll change the frequency, the tone, like how high and low it is, and the number of DDDs, because they're identifying the predator that's there and the threat level. So even when you're walking by, they'll do the chickadee for you as you go into their territory. And not only are they doing it for themselves, the tufted titmice, white-breasted nuthatches, but the squirrels, the chipmunks, they're all listening in. And it's kind of like a community patrol, a community watch to keep an eye on what predators are present and alert not only the chickadees that are around, but also alert the other animals that are there too. And you'll hear this also with blue jays with their larger calls and chasing. So if you start to hear that chickadee song and you're looking for birds, or you just start to kind of be more familiar with the natural sounds in your area, it may tip you off that there might be a hawk sitting up high, or there might be a coyote or another predator. Not that anything here is dangerous, but it'll be a little richer of a walk and an experience, and really allow you to kind of connect with your neighborhood. And this can be just even when you're inside, listening through your windows, or just going for a walk right now. So what I want to highlight here is a couple of birds that you may start to see more or hear that are more common in the wintertime. These two actually, you know, some birds will migrate down south, or people may migrate to Florida. The white-throated sparrow and a few other birds that I'll show you, they actually migrate to Massachusetts in the winter, and in the summertime, they're migrating farther north, either northern New England, Canada, or the like. But here's a white-throated sparrow, and this is a picture that I just took in my yard, and it's a forsythia bush. And what you can hear in their song is, "Oh, Canada, Canada, Canada." So you can start, and they'll start calling now, but more in the next month or so. So here's their song. Okay. And so there you hear, "Oh, Canada, 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 Canada," just one more time. And then these birds, these will be on the ground and in small shrubs, kind of cover where they feel protected. And they do come to feeders, and they will be on the ground depending on the area. And you could have a large flock, or you could have one or two. It really depends what they've kind of chosen, where they've chosen to be that winter, because it can fluctuate. You may see just one or two, you may see like dozens here. But one of the other really common birds that you'll see in the wintertime is a dark-eyed junco. And these are almost always going to be on the ground. They'll come up to feeders a little bit, but they're pretty much eating the food that's falling off the feeders. And they're seed-eating birds there as well in the wintertime. So they're looking for a lot of seeds. And this was a picture that I took at the museum, just right next to the bird feeders that we have on the property. And their call is a little bit different. And here it is.
Dark-eyed junco.
So what you're hearing there, it's the same note over and over again, kind of rapid, like that. And here it is one more time.
Dark-eyed junco.
And when you start to hear that call and the "Oh, Canada, Canada, Canada" call from the white-throated sparrow, you know spring really is right around the corner. When these birds fly away and they're migrating back north, you know you've kind of made that complete turn from like kind of the winter or the mud season in that early springtime to the warmer springtime when the cherries and the apple trees will be blooming. Now, here's the last bird that I want to talk about here, and this is the Carolina wren. And this bird, in most neighborhoods right now, you're going to hear this calling. And I'm going to play that song for you in a minute. And this is a very small bird. You know, if you took 3 pennies out of your pocket or a nickel, that's about how much it weighs. It's maybe, there's probably about 2 birds if you made a fist. 2 birds would kind of pick up the fist. It's a very gregarious bird. It moves extremely fast. In this time of year, they might be in small flocks of 3 to 6, but these will nest in under eaves in buildings. They'll go into garages. You'll see this in a lot of areas. It's a relatively common bird, but and you can hear it's a really, really loud bird. So you can hear that even when your windows are closed. I hear it every morning in Mansfield, where I live.
Carolina wren.
And so what you can hear there, it's a little bit like tea kettle, tea kettle, tea kettle, that second call. So I'll play it one more time, but it's a very, very loud.
Carolina wren.
Here's that tea kettle song. And this is a bird that you're hearing right now. I'd say my morning runs right around New Year's Day, and even in December, but really New Year's Day and past that, a lot louder, a lot more active. You're starting to hear, you know, the harbingers of spring in the bird songs there right now. The only other bird that will be as loud as the Carolina wren right now, and again, you're looking at really a month later for more song, is the cardinal with its kind of like strong, sharp whistle. So when you're hearing the Carolina wren and when you're hearing the dark-eyed junco or white-throated sparrow, just thinking of them, there's going to be a bird around, and this is our most common raptor, hawk in Massachusetts here, and this is the Cooper's hawk. And you can also notice it's good at balancing on one foot right there, because it's only got one leg. Its second leg is up here, and that's actually, this was taken last January when I was on a walk with my daughter, and it's keeping warm up there. It's like you put gloves on or hiding your extremities right through there. But this Cooper's hawk, you can really see its dramatic red eyes as well right there. And right there is our most common hawk around here. And it will be looking and hunting these birds throughout the day. So you'll notice these birds are constantly looking around and going into shrubs or going into cover or pausing through here. It's because they're under constant threat from a lot of different predators, especially this Cooper's hawk and also the red-tailed hawk that I showed you beforehand. So if you have bird feeders, I can guarantee that this hawk is stopping at your feeders once, if not 7 times a day, kind of going through, just like the bird, like the smaller birds are looking for food, these birds are constantly on the lookout for food there as well too. And if they happen to get a meal, it will stay around for a while it digests, so you'll get a good look at it there too. But I do want to highlight that. So now I want to switch a little bit to something that's exciting, and this is kind of a moderate season for this. But there's, every few years, there's something called an eruption. And an eruption is just a rapid increasing growth. So in this case, a winter eruption of finches and other similar birds is when birds that are normally typically spending their winter up north, and these could be grosbeaks, these could be crossbills, siskins, or certain types of nuthatches, based on the cycles of food, they end up coming more southern. So what happens here on your feeders, you may start to notice this bird, and this is called a pine siskin, and it looks very similar superficially to a goldfinch. And these pine siskins here are coming more southern this year, and you'll see these a lot at your feeders. I want to highlight this bird here in case you start to see like, well, that kind of looks like a goldfinch, but it looks a little bit different. And these are more prevalent this year. So I'll talk about eruption with this bird more. This is a red-breasted nuthatch, and I'll show pictures in a little bit of the nuthatch that you're used to seeing, a white-breasted nuthatch. So these eat a lot of conifer seeds. So spruces, and in this case is a white pine seed from that I took to the museum. And look how elegant the bill is shaped. You think of bird's bill a lot of times being straight, but you can see this lower level is cupped and how neatly it fits in to get that pine seed. And think of going into the pine cone and pulling out the pine seed. The beak is really well adapted. It's kind of scraping in there and pulling it out in addition to getting insects and other things from trees. So when the food sources up north are lower in the wintertime, you'll see a lot of white red-breasted nuthatches and other birds coming southern, looking where there might be an increase in white pine or other conifer seeds here. And again, this year they're present. They're not in high numbers like they were 3 years ago, but they're present unlike last year where there's very few. And look how well it hangs on to the side of the tree. It's really just a beautiful bird, and it's really loud. So if you're walking, you can hear it. Here's their song.
Red-breasted nuthatch.
So you can hear that ank, 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 ank.
Red-breasted nuthatch.
And so this will come to your feeders if it's in the area, if you're walking, especially in any type of pine, woodlands on an edge, say near a meadow, and you hear or see chickadees, you hear white-breasted nuthatches or titmice. This bird, especially this year, may be mixed into those flocks. And it'll be moving around on branches, up and down tree trunks. It's really well adapted for that type of movement. Not only looking for seeds, but also looking in the cavities for potential insects. Because believe it or not, insects might be, certain species might be a little bit active in the wintertime. And then they're also going to be looking where they might be storing seeds. So in this area right here, birds like chickadees or the nuthatches may hide seeds. They're called seed caches in here. And they may be going back where they've been kind of collecting seeds to eat later on in the winter through there. And you can see it again with the nuthatch here, the red-breasted nuthatch holding onto the seed, and this is on the side of a white pine tree or a red pine that we have at the museum that I took 2 years ago when there were flocks that were 40 or 50 large in the wildlife sanctuary. So I wanted to play their song one more time so you're familiar with it.
Red-breasted nuthatch.
So again, that ank, 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 ank. And so the nuthatch that we're used to seeing is a white-breasted nuthatch, and this is here all year. And again, the same as kind of running or moving up and down the trees, looking in the moss and the lichens and the little fissures in the bark here for insects or seeds that might be stored there or cached. And here's its song. So think of that slow ank, 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 ank. And now think of a 2-year-old doing it who's running really fast.
White-breasted nuthatch.
It's that same kind of general sound, kind of that ank or yank sound, but it's much faster and much higher.
White-breasted nuthatch.
So when you hear chickadees, like that sweetie or the chickadee, listen, use the chickadee as the clue because that song is a little bit easier. But then listen to see if you have ank, 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 or like that ank, 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 because that will indicate you might have a white-breasted nuthatch or a red-breasted nuthatch through here. And when they're on the trees, they're looking in these little holes, and you can see this nice picture here of it actually poking in the dead stick. Like the dead wood is really important for a lot of birds because it's good habitat for insects and other animals that they are looking around to eat. Think of all the structure right here that's really good for insects to hide or kind of spend the winter in, and these are constantly going up and down the trees to find those insects. And then on your feeders, and this feeder, if you have black oiled sunflower seed, if you're wondering what good winter seed is one of the best, if not the best to use. You can see it here. This is the feeder at the museum. Black oiled sunflower seed. It's upside down. It's picking the sunflower seeds out, and then it's going to fly to a sugar maple that we have nearby, some brush, and it's going to eat the seed and keep coming back because feeders out in the open are good, but the birds can get worried about being eaten by those Cooper's hawks that I showed you. So if feeders near some place where the birds can kind of hide and have their meal, you'll get more birds coming in there because it's a little bit safer they feel safer and more comfortable. So the last bird that I'm going to talk about is very uncommon. in the wintertime. This is rare to come down here. It's called an evening grosbeak. So it's more cardinal or robin side, and it's a beautiful bird. You know, it's a finch-like bird. You can see how large its beak is for crushing seeds right through here. You can see the little curve on it, pulls seeds out of cones and stuff like that. This isn't a very uncommon bird during an eruption year, but this year it's been observed in Canton, it's been observed in Sharon, it's in smaller numbers. So if you have a feeder that you watch, you may be surprised one morning or afternoon or whenever to look out and this bird may be at the feeder. And if it's at the feeder, it may be coming back throughout the springtime. And here's its song.
Evening grosbeak.
So kind of like a sharp pinging type of sound right through there. But I just want to put this in there because they're in very low numbers here, but they actually are in numbers. So you may see them because like I said, just down the street in Canton and Sharon, and I'm sure in Westwood as well too. I'm just not familiar if there's been observations in Westwood. These are around and it's a real treat to brighten up a winter day. So the next area that I want to move into is kind of thinking about the birds and thinking about wintertime. And their main goal is don't freeze and don't starve. So in this talk, we're going to look at kind of the don't starve part. You know, how are they getting food? And this is just a neat little thing of when you start to walk around and start to just kind of look closer at the natural world and kind of open your eyes and slow down, you'll see things that are just interesting and kind of brightens the view. So this was a picture I took last February or so of a chickadee. And if you notice, the branch here is wet right through here. So this is actually a sugar maple, and this can be any maple tree. So in nights where it's below freezing and days where it's above freezing, sap will start to run. That's when you get, you know, that's how they make maple syrup and the sap running right here. So we cracked in this branch of our sugar maple, and sap was running so much it was dripping off onto the ground. And I noticed the chickadees were coming in here. And what they're actually doing is they're drinking the sap from the tree through here. And that's just kind of a neat thing to see. And not only will they be drinking the sap there, any insects that are active at this time of year for whatever adaptations they might have to deal with the cold temperature, they'll probably be coming to the sap too. And then again, it's a food source in multiple ways for the chickadee. It's something to look for in terms of when you're just walking around, especially, you know, during the maple sugar season. So let's look at finding food, because a lot of the diet that we have for chickadees, you think in the wintertime of bird feeders are going to be seeds, but I want to show something that's pretty interesting here. And I like this picture here too, because chickadees will act like woodpeckers sometimes. So if you look closely at the head right here, you can see little flecks of wood chips there, because it was actually carving out a little hole in a branch along a pond of a soft tree when I took this picture last year. But I want to look at this because, one, what a great posture. Look how the chickadee is just hanging out right here. And you look at that branch and you don't think there's anything interesting here. And when I took these pictures, not that the chickadee's not interesting, but you don't notice anything. When I took these pictures, I didn't notice what was happening. So I want you to watch what the chickadee does here. I didn't see this until I actually looked at him on the computer. So you can see his beak is very close to right there. Okay, it's right into that little spot right there. Just a little bump on a tree, you know, little bump on a twig, something you'd never even notice. Okay, but it's playing around with that little bump right through there. And then if I just zoom in, crop it a little more, you can see its beak is right on that little bump. And again, look at its legs, how it's balancing. It's really remarkable. And remember, that's just its ankles that you're seeing right there. Okay, the joint that you're seeing there isn't its knee, it's its ankle. The knees are actually inside the feathers there. So now look at this. You'll see a little pop of color that's very small, and it's orange right in the beak right there. And if I zoom in right there, you can see the orange. Again, it's blurry because I'm zooming a lot there, but you're seeing, like, what is it pulling out of there? And then again, if you look at its bill now, there's orange on its bill. Okay, and you can see it up close. You can see the orange on the bill. You can see it right there. Okay. It's a fly. What you're seeing right there is a gall. It's a baby fly. And this is, again, these are some pictures. I didn't take these. That's why you can see the links right there. These are, gall midges and wood midges. So these are flies basically that are eating the inside of the tree there. They trick the tree into growing it a place to live, and then they eat around it, and then they emerge in the springtime as a fly. That's what a midge is right through there. And the chickadee was eating that. And here's some galls that you might see, or now as you're walking around, when you look at oak leaves, like what are those bumps on it? Or you look at little twigs on the oaks, like what are those bumps? If you look at blueberries, you'll notice these strange little bumps with all these little holes in it. So that could be a fly, a wasp, or another insect eating the inside of the plant. It basically this relationship where the insect tricks the plant into growing in an apartment, a place to live, and then it eats the apartment, and then when it gets big enough, it goes through its metamorphosis and becomes an adult wasp or an adult fly. And birds are constantly looking for these and eating what's inside. So it's this really wonderful kind of balance between, you know, trying to hide and be protected and trying not to be food in terms of the bird right through there. And this is an oak gall, and I just put this up there because these are a little bit easier to see. So then the next part here, I'm going to talk about bird brains, because you always hear like, oh, what a bird brain, or like this and that. So like, what's going on with bird brains here? And since it's the chickadee, you can kind of appreciate this because you can see this bird. It's a wonderful bird. So I'm just drawing back to the red-breasted nuthatch picture here. I talked about seed hiding in these areas. The birds will collect seeds and they'll store them for the winter right through here. Okay. So now what I want to think of, like, I'm always losing my keys, for example, or I'm always misplacing my wallet, or I'm always misplacing that. So when you're doing that, you're trying to find stuff, or if you're trying to get a sense of direction and find things, one of the parts of your brain that's playing a role in that is called the hippocampus. It helps you remember where things are. So let's look at the bird brains right here. So there's a question that's been asking, like, do birds with larger brains, and specifically in this hippocampus region, it's a spatial mapping region, do they survive and reproduce more? So this is a really incredible experiment that's done. And I just want to highlight this because it's really staggering how cool this is. This is a bird feeder, okay, right through here. You can see the chickadee flying in. This is a mountain chickadee. You can see it's a little bit different. And landing here and getting a seed right through there. So remember, do birds that can remember better survive and reproduce better? Okay, so when you go out, they put up 8 bird feeders up in the sky in a forest. Okay, and they did this many times right through there. You can see the feeders right through there. But if you look at the bird's legs right here, it's got that red chip on it and a green chip. The green has a little number on it that tells the researchers which bird that is. So it's like a mark, it's an identifying marking. The red chip, though, is really cool. The red chip is a key. So see right here, this is an RFID chip. And so the RFID chip will allow the feeder to open or not open if the bird lands on the right bird feeder, right through there. So remember, do they remember better? So the experiment that they did here is they let these mountain chickadees fly and get used to this bird feeder in a forest in Alaska and in a few other areas. After a few weeks of them always getting seeds at any feeder that they went to, the researchers chose one door of one feeder to open. So when they landed 7 feeders, the doors wouldn't open. When they landed at the 8th feeder or whatever it was, that door would open. So let's just say here, they were testing, let's say this is the only feeder that would open for that chickadee. So when it flies in, it lands, does the feeder open or not? So I wanted to see how many mistakes the bird would make. You know, does it always, after a while, after it gets used to it, does it always fly to the right feeder on the first time? Or is it always making mistakes? And that was how they were testing how well do they remember. And remember, these all look identical. These all look the same. What's really staggering here is the birds with the better memory that next spring and the next year, they consistently were more likely to survive that winter. And then during the spring and summertime, were more likely to produce more eggs and have more offspring that were also successful. So you're seeing in this in this one season, this small evolution. So what does that actually look like here? So I don't usually like using graphs in here, but it's so amazing what's happening here. The populations that they looked at were up in Alaska down to Kansas. So think harsh winters, more milder winters, British Columbia, Missoula, where I was born, Colorado, and Kansas right here. On the graph, this is brain size, and this is number of neurons and brain size. So Alaska, look how large the brain size is. In this winter time, in the springtime, they lose these neurons and the brain gets smaller, believe it or not, because they switch over to insects. So larger brain size in Alaska, smaller brain size in Kansas, and it falls on this really nice relationship. Neurons, larger in Alaska, more in Alaska, excuse me, less Kansas. So harsher winter, more a better ability to remember where the seeds are that they stored, and this is reflected in how big their brain is. I just want to highlight this too. So when they put the birds in Alaska, Kansas in the same environment, it's called a common garden, their brain volume was the same. When we looked at it in the wild, the Alaska birds had a significantly larger brain size in the hippocampus than the Kansas birds. But when they looked at the neurons in the common garden, okay, the same environment, the Alaska birds had almost double the number of neurons in that part than the Kansas birds, and this was also the same in the wild. So they actually show the brain changing seasonally here, and it was dependent on the populations. You know, birds that lived in a harsher environment, it was much more beneficial to have a better memory than the birds in Kansas. So you can see the similarities and differences. It's really just incredible. So when you're looking at your white-breasted nuthatches, when you're looking at the chickadees and other birds around here, again, it's gonna be less in Massachusetts, especially at a feeder, because it doesn't matter if they can find their food as well as not than in Alaska, but their brain, the physiology actually shifts with the wintertime. And so what I want to highlight with that here is if you look at like robins here, you know, this I took in January on Lake Massapauga in Sharon. There was about 70 robins in these cedar trees. You can see the juniper berries right there, okay? Eating the fruit. You know, so when you look at your robins come springtime, and the robins that you're seeing here now most likely migrated from Canada, and the robins that you see coming in the spring are most likely migrating back from the south. You'll see this in large flocks, and you'll see the birds throwing, throwing leaves around, okay? Kind of like my 2-year-old, their toys, just throwing things around right here. But what the robins are doing here, okay, is they're looking in, you think of worms, you know, early bird gets the worm, but they're looking for insects. Leaves are really, really important for birds because what's in the leaves is typically a moisture environment. There's more protection and cover. So the insects there that the birds are relying on are able to survive in the leaves right through there. So in spring, summer, and fall, the birds you're seeing, okay, they're eating insects. Then you get into later fall and winter, the diet for a lot of these birds shifts completely or partially over to fruit. And just think of like an apple or, you know, avocado, something with a thick skin, okay? That fruit is going to be hard to digest. So what you're going to happen with the birds is there's going to be a physiological change. Maybe the digestive system changes, maybe the enzymes change, where they actually start to function differently so they can process the fruits. And the bird I want to highlight is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, warbler. This is a yellow-rumped warbler. This is a picture that I just took in Canton last year, and this will be in Westwood as well too. This is one of the first warblers to fly back in the spring and one of the last warblers to fly home in the fall. This is its fall colors right here. This is a picture I took just in a parking lot in Canton last year. So I want to talk about Umber in the springtime. Here's a tufted titmouse that you might see, and it's got 8 or 9 caterpillars in its beak right there. It needs to collect 6,000 to 10,000 caterpillars over 3 weeks to feed all its babies. I can talk more about that later. You can see this warbler right here, eating insects right here. You know, so its diet is very protein rich in this case. It's focused exclusively on eating insects. And the yellow-rumped warbler does the same thing. I just don't have pictures of the yellow-rumped warbler eating the insects. But in the fall, this is one of the last birds to fly back. You can see this up into November if you're looking for it in some years. And this is a picture I took last year when I was walking through the woods at the museum. And if people are allergic to this, they might be familiar with this vine right here. And most people are allergic. See little rootlets coming out of the vine right here? This is poison ivy. In the fall and flocks, I always see this bird on poison ivy. So this is a great picture, but it's pretty good. So you can see right there, I see these berries. See the poison ivy? This bird eats tons of poison ivy on its migration home, along with other fruits there as well too. And the poison ivy berries, for those that eat poison ivy berries, I'm joking, I know you don't. Well, I hope you don't. It's got a very waxed cuticle. It's nearly indigestible. But the yellow-rumped warblers, not only do the enzymes that they're producing change from insect season to fruit season, the digestive system actually lengthens. So if you have a longer digestive system, you have a longer time to absorb the nutrients that are in there, and you're more effective through that. You can see that right through there, and you can see how these birds are eating. So the last part here, especially with Valentine's Day coming up, I want to talk about cold feet in wintertime, because you may not notice this, but think of walking barefoot on ice, especially wet ice like through there. You can see these two mallards right here. You can see this right through. Like, think of the frostbite that you would get almost immediately. You know, like, why are these birds able to survive? Like, their feet should, you know, if you get frostbite, your skin's going to die. The cells in your body will die pretty quickly. It's, you know, you're looking at minutes through there. That's when they talk about turning purple, blue, and black. But with gulls, and this is the cold feet part. With gulls and everything like that, think of the blood flow into the feet. If they're not getting blood, the tissue's not going to be able to survive right through there. And what's happened here, as the blood flows down through here, the veins are so close to right here, 35 degrees Celsius, you know, so you're looking close to 100 degrees Fahrenheit right through there. The heat is transferred over to the vein going back up. So as you start to bring blood into the feet, it gets colder and colder and colder on the way down, because heat then absorbed into the veins going on the way up. So when you actually get down to the toes might be at 1, 2, or 3 degrees Celsius or Fahrenheit right through there. So nearly freezing right through there. As the blood starts to go back up, it warms up because it's being warmed up by the blood coming down. So it's a heat. So the birds are actually transferring that heat before the blood gets down. So their body never gets cold, because if the cold actually got back up into the bird, you know, 20, 15 degrees, it would die pretty quickly or wouldn't be able to function well. That's why you get frostbite in your hands, your toes, and your feet, is your body cuts off circulation or slows it down, so you don't end up cooling your internal organs. Because once temperature gets too low, the proteins and enzymes in your body can't function properly, and you won't survive. And then we'll leave it at that. And then next time we'll talk more about owls. But I just really wanted to thank you for the time today. And I hope that you were able to learn something interesting and make nature in your neighborhood a bit more accessible. And thank you very much.
That was amazing. Now, I know we can't really see you here very well, but we can see this really well. So I'm just going to ask a few quick questions. Thank you, Sean. I love the way you present. You bring things that people want to know, and then you add the science that most of us don't even know how to ask. So it was fabulous. So winter birds, I have feeders outside. What's the best way to help them survive, especially like during a blizzard, when it's really snowing out? Is there anything, I mean, they always say put water out, which I do. I didn't realize that the black seeds were better for them in some ways than regular seeds and those little things. But what do you suggest is the best way to keep your bird feeders and your birds fed during the winter?
So like with the black oil sunflower, they just have a high fat and protein content. So those are always good. Putting out suet, even blocks of just the white suet fat that you can even get from a deli or anywhere.
Sure.
That's really good, because birds need fat. So that can be helpful. And then if you have your feeders positioned or in an area where there's shrubs, so where the snow is coming in, but you can get underneath the shrubs and they're protected in that way. So if it's out in the open and you're not getting birds to it, it's probably because the birds don't feel safe coming to it. You know, I've got feeders in my front yard, right? You know, and I get birds coming there, even though people are walking on the street. I actually have a lot of birds in my yard, but it's because I don't clean up wildflowers until the springtime. So there's structure on the ground that they can hide in. And like if you have, you know, native bushes like 9-bark, or even non-native bushes like forsythia or lilac or anything like that, having those there provides different structures and areas for them to hide and feel comfortable in. Think of the difference between being in a wide open mowed lawn versus an area with lots of different kind of structure areas to hide in, because then on top of that, you'll also have insects and other food sources in there, and they just feel safe. So think of what it might make the bird feeling safe from this hawk, you know, for example, on the screen that you can see right there. And then if you wanted to do a little extra, you could have a bird bath out there that has a heater in it, you know, like the little thermocoils through there. Some people do like to do that in the winter time as well.
Well, I cannot thank you enough. I walked by a lake and now I'm going to listen for the birds. I've never done
Oh,
that.
yeah.
I mean, I always love listening, but now I'm really going to listen. It was great. Thank you. I hope you'll come back in the spring and we'll do a spring bird watching. Thank you to all my seniors
I would love.
who joined us today. Please remember to stay safe during this pandemic. We will make it together. Don't forget, wear your mask, social distance, and together we will make it through. Thank you, Westwood Media, and thank you once again, Sean from Mass Audubon. We will see you again in the spring. Thank you, everyone.
See you soon. Thank you very much.